Well, good morning, Facebook fans, Facebook live stream fans. Ralph Serpe here at the Baltimore Community Foundation, joined today with Kevin Griffin Moreno.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. We are giving our Facebook live stream audience a behind-the-scenes look at our 20-minute update. We're joined here with our studio crew, Andrew Waldman, who's trying to get the audio working in the back, and Mike Wen, who's our web and camera guy. You're going to see the behind the scenes of our 20-minute call. We spend 20 minutes on the 20th of each month looking at a topic, programmatic topic here at the Baltimore Community Foundation. We will start at 9 a.m. with our phone call, an interactive phone call. You can, as part of the Facebook live stream, ask questions in the comment section down below. Please hit the like, love, and share button and watch those emoticons move across the screen from Kevin across this way. So please do that.
You can even hit the wow button if you like.
Hit the wow button. So we are going to get started in just about a minute. Kevin, you excited to talk about public policy today?
Always, Ralph.
Great. Well, if you have any questions, again, please direct them to the comment section below. Please hit the like and share button and the love button and the wow button, and we are going to get started in about 10 seconds. In fact, I think I'm going to get started a little early today. Here we go. Ready? Well, good morning and welcome to today's 20-minute update, BCF's monthly series of interactive calls and Facebook live streams to give you an inside look at BCF, our initiatives, and the work we do in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and the entire region. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ralph Serpe, your host this morning with BCF, and joining me in studio is Kevin Griffin Moreno. Kevin leads BCF's community investment area, which oversees our grant-making, initiatives, and advocacy, which includes the public policy agenda we will be discussing today. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, and good morning to everybody listening.
Great. Well, before we get started, I want to thank our Civic Leadership Fund donors for their support. It's because of you that BCF can provide resources like the 20-minute update. If you haven't made your Civic Leadership Fund gift in 2016, please do so after this call and live stream. Your support will keep these interactive updates going. Today, we are talking about our public policy agenda and specifically how BCF decides what to focus on in general and what we'll be looking at in 2017. So, Kevin, let's start with a big picture. Community foundations are generally community grant makers. At BCF, we combine grant making with some initiatives and advocacy. So let's talk about the importance of advocacy as a tool that the Community Foundation uses.
Sure. Well, it's really right in those three pillars, grant making, initiatives, and advocacy. Each one complements and supports the other. So most people know us, as you pointed out, through our grant making, through the grants that we make to nonprofit organizations in our community. But community foundations are also laboratories for good ideas and good practices. And that's really where our initiatives come in, including Middle Grade Partnership, Central Maryland Transportation Alliance, and our Neighborhood Sustainability Initiative, and others that we've incubated in the past. And then that final leg of the stool, advocacy, it really is what extends the impact of our grant making and initiatives. Because you cannot run an initiative nor make a grant except in a public policy context. So in a sense, all three approaches are taking the same philosophy, which is that there is something that is not working right in our community. And we have a values-based idea of what we need to do to fix it.
So what is BCF, how does BCF conceive of its advocacy? What does it how does it define what advocacy is?
It's complicated. So many things are with BCF because we are the community's foundation, and theoretically, any issue of relevance to the community could fall under our advocacy. So what we've done is developed a set of definitions for what the activities that fall under advocacy, and then a process by which we determine whether and how to take something on. So the types of activities that fall under public policy advocacy for us include direct lobbying. As a public charity, we are allowed to lobby directly.
So we are a registered lobbyist in
Correct.
Annapolis.
In Annapolis,
Okay.
That's right. So we advocate on legislation and budgets. We also do a great deal of strategic communications with the support of our communications team here at BCF. We also conduct advocacy through grant making by supporting organizations like Advocates for Children and Youth and ACLU of Maryland and others that are doing vital advocacy work in the community. Pardon me. In terms of how we decide what we take on, we have what I call a 3 and 3 test. It's 2 sets of 3 checks. The first is relevance, capacity, and value. And what we mean by that is, in order for us to consider taking on an advocacy initiative, whatever it is, it has to be directly relevant to the work that we're doing. It has to emerge from our grant making or our initiatives, and therefore gives us some substance.
That means it needs to be relevant to the focus areas that we have at this particular time.
Correct, which are education and neighborhoods.
Okay.
The second check is whether we have the capacity to take it on. Do we have the internal knowledge? Do we have the expertise on staff? Do we have the resources on staff to devote to this? And then finally, what value are we adding to the conversation? If we're but one in a chorus of Me Too's down in Annapolis, that might not be the best use of our time. But if we are actually adding something of substance to the debate, then it could be worth our time. So once an issue is past those 3 checks, we then determine what the most appropriate role for BCF is. Mm-hmm. We can be a signatory to somebody else's initiative, provide testimony, issue op-eds, etc. We can be a partner, participant in informing public policy agenda, helping to craft legislation, organizing meetings, and so forth. And then finally, we can be a catalyst. We can actually come up with the idea, bring all the necessary people together, bring all the materials to bear, and take the lead in the campaign.
So staying in that big picture, tell me how this is structured within the Community Foundation.
Sure.
Is there a community committee that's involved in this? How does this structure?
There is indeed. There is a committee of our board of directors that has oversight of this work. We also have an internal cross-departmental team involving folks from our community investment side, our development, donor services, and communication side, our executive office, and others who meet on a regular basis to formulate tactics. So if you think of the board committee as being our policy and strategy generator, the internal team is our tactics and practice.
So when we talk about our Civic Leadership Fund and the work that Civic Leadership Fund fuels, it's really this advocacy work that that fund is fueling.
And I should point out that generally people, when they think of advocacy, they immediately think of lobbying. And I just want to reemphasize that this is but one tool in the box for us. Some of our biggest impact in the public policy sphere is through the relationships that we cultivate and maintain with public officials. The strong relationships that we have, for instance, with the current school CEO, Dr. Santelises, the relationships that we've cultivated with mayors and governors, the productive partnerships that we have established with local and state agency and department heads. These are, long after a legislative session has passed, these are the folks that we need to work with to make sure that policies are properly implemented and that our donors' largesse is appropriately leveraged.
Well, I want to talk to you about how we involve donors in our public policy work. But before we do that, if you're just joining us, this is BCF's 20-minute update, our series of monthly interactive calls and Facebook live streams. I'm talking today, I'm Ralph Serpe with BCF, and I'm talking with Griffin Moreno about BCF's public policy agenda for Baltimore. If you're watching us on Facebook live stream, either live or in a future recording, please remember to like and share down below and watch those emoticons move across the screen. And so others may learn about BCF's action agenda for Baltimore. Kevin, let's get back to, we talked about how we involve staff and board and this broad reaching public policy agenda. How do we involve our donor and the broader community in our public policy agenda?
The first gateway in is through our website. We have an advocacy page on our website that we try and keep current with what we're doing in this area. We also communicate through action alerts, through our news and notes, newsletters, through various one-off communications throughout the year. So really getting connected to our communications through our web and email and print communications is a way to stay informed. But we also speak to the community at large. Our CEO, Tom Wilcox, writes occasional opinion editorial pieces talking about things like school funding or the governance of city schools. And this really communicates not only to our donors, but really states our position and our ideas to the community at large. And then finally, for donors who are interested in getting more involved, it's always so powerful when we are trying to advocate a budget or a legislative item for policymakers to hear from their constituents, not just from the hired guns, so to speak. So if there are donors who feel passionately about an issue that we're working on, by all means, they should get in touch.
Yeah, and to that point, beginning next year in early 2017, we'll be launching a new web-based platform that will allow anyone to come to our website, put in your address, and find out who your elected officials are and get issues that we're working on, communications to them about those issues. So more on that later. We talked about the importance of advocacy, how we define advocacy, who's involved in that here. Let's jump ahead to what we're looking at in 2017 around some specific issues that we're working on. So let's look at our issues that we're taking a look at.
Well, and I should disclaim that our board advocacy committee that we mentioned earlier is actually meeting later today to
well, Kevin, set the agenda.
Take a formal look at our draft agenda.
Just set the agenda.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
They're not listening. They're not watching.
But what I will say is that in the past, adequate funding for Baltimore City Schools has been a priority for us, and I can't imagine that it won't continue to be so, particularly since we are moving into not only was a structural deficit of a huge amount announced recently on the part of city schools, but we also are facing a revenue shortfall at the state level. We have some policies that make it harder for city school funding to increase. So we're definitely going to be part of that conversation.
On the education side, what about in neighborhoods?
In neighborhoods, last year the legislature created, or made permanent rather, a couple of funds to support neighborhood development, both in Baltimore through the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative and at the state level. So we're very interested to see how those public monies are going to be deployed to support good projects in Baltimore communities and throughout our region, Baltimore County included. And we're also working in tandem with our Central Maryland Transportation Alliance on some regional transit and transportation-related policies that benefit Baltimore neighborhoods.
Great.
And then finally, we are also working closely with our Neighborhood Sustainability Initiative, because sustainability in all of its various manifestations is so important to the health of our communities throughout the city.
Yeah, we're a leading municipality, a leading city in this country on sustainability.
Absolutely.
So we'll keep the pressure there. Let's talk about charitable giving issues.
Sure.
We were the folks behind Endow Maryland that allows for a tax credit for gifts to permanent endowments at Maryland's community foundations. What are we doing in that area?
So the long story short on that is that we're doing some real good now with the state set aside. The state allocated $250,000 in tax credits to support this charitable giving incentive. Wouldn't it be great if we had $1 million? Because $1 million in state tax credits would generate $4 million in donations that go to support Maryland-based organizations that are doing good in communities, not just in Baltimore, but really throughout the state. We're so fortunate in this work to have partners in the Maryland Community Foundations Association. This is over a dozen community foundations, ranging from literally the hills of western Maryland to the wetlands of the Eastern Shore and down into southern Maryland. It's a very powerful group, so we're looking forward to expanding this tax credit.
Excellent. Kevin, it's time to open up our call for questions. It's time to open up our Facebook live stream for questions. If you dialed into the call today, you can press, please listen carefully, if you can press *6 now to unmute yourself and ask a question. After you finish asking your question, please press *6 again to mute your line so we don't get a lot of feedback. If you're following our live stream on Facebook, simply ask a question in the comment section down below, and that'll come over to me from from Andrew Waldman. Or you can tweet a question using the hashtag 2020minute update. If you're on the line and you'd like to ask a question, please press *6 to unmute your line and ask your question.
While we're waiting for our first caller, I also wanted to mention that one of the issues the BCF is going to be tracking throughout 2017 is the State Commission on Funding and Educational Excellence, also known as the Kirwan Commission. This is the group that was pulled together to study the adequacy of funding for state school public education in Maryland, and to make recommendations to the legislature. Their report is due in December of 2017, and there's been a lot of meetings and consultant reports picking up different aspects of education funding. So we and our partners are very concerned with that.
Any questions on our Facebook live stream? No? If you're on our call today and you'd like to ask a question, now is the time. Please press *6 to unmute your line and ask a question. And as I ask the next question, you can just jump right in. Please don't wait for my prompting. Kevin, you mentioned transportation as one of the areas we'll be looking at for 2017. Is there anything in particular we're looking at in the transportation area?
There's been a few issues that were hotly contested between the governor and the legislature in this past year's legislative session, some of which will return. A lot of it has to do with oversight of the Maryland Transportation Administration, and also the mechanisms by which transportation projects get funded in Maryland. So Central Maryland Transportation Alliance, which is online, and an initiative of BCF. In addition to the work that they're doing directly, they've also worked with other partners such as Thousand Friends of Maryland to pull together a transportation coalition to address not only these top-level policy issues, but sort of user experience, rider level issues.
Yeah. You know, we talk about how much money the Community Foundation has to grant. We talk about the dollars we have to create initiatives. We've been building the public policy work at the foundation over time. We have a question coming in from Facebook that I'll get to in just a moment. So can you tell me sort of how has in the last 5 years or so, 7 years or so, how has public policy gained momentum here at the Community Foundation as a focus area?
It's a good question. I think that for any philanthropy, there's going to be some trepidation about getting into the public policy realm. But going back to this idea that advocacy is not only a means, but a crucial means of extending the impact of our grant making and our initiatives. This was an idea that was very quickly embraced by our board, particularly when they came to understand how big a toolbox that is. That it's not just lobbying, but it is communications, it is the relationship building, it is the using influence to affect really good public policies.
You know, one of the questions we received, and a question that that we look at here at BCF, is how is our public policy work influenced through the race, equity, and inclusion lens that we use here at the Community Foundation?
So as many of our listeners and viewers might be aware, Baltimore Community Foundation has for a number of years now expressed a very strong commitment to principles of race, equity, and inclusion. And we are building a system by which those principles can be incorporated into all of the work that we do, including public policy advocacy. So we're very much committed to that. We, in addition to our committee of the board that focuses on advocacy, we also have a race, equity, and inclusion committee. And in this area, these two groups are going to be working together to determine not only how we can articulate a statement of principles with regard to race, equity, and inclusion, but how, more excitingly, how we can incorporate those principles into the actual practice of advocacy, which is much tougher, but ultimately much more rewarding and much more valuable to the people that we serve.
Yeah. You know, right now we're asking people to go to our webpage and take a look at and share our Dreams for Baltimore page. And some of the folks who have shared their Dreams for Baltimore revolve around the issues of race, equity, and inclusion. Kevin, you've been doing this work for a long time, and we haven't asked you to share your dreams for Baltimore at the end of this year. So do you have any dreams for Baltimore you'd like to share with us?
I have more dreams for Baltimore than can be expressed in the time that we have. My dream for Baltimore involves strong leadership on the part of the public sector through the mayor and the city council and government, through the corporate community, our business leaders who are creating jobs and stimulating economic activity in Baltimore, and through the independent sector, the nonprofit community, philanthropies and nonprofits that are working in tandem and as a complement, not as a substitute, but as a complement to government and business. I think with those three sectors working together and showing civic leadership, that Baltimore has many opportunities to be the city that we know it can be, and I'm very optimistic that it will be.
Well, Kevin, Griffin Moreno, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us on our phone call, on our Facebook live stream, and if you're watching us on our LinkedIn video, thank you for joining us today on our BCF 20-minute update on public policy. We're coming up on 9:20, which means this 20-minute update is coming to an end. We'd like to thank you all for joining us. We are back next month on Friday, January 20th. Listen up. We will be joined with a conversation with the Baltimore Women's Giving Circle, one of the largest women's giving circles on the planet. And we're happy to talk with them about the tremendous work they've been doing for over a decade here in Baltimore. To be involved in our public policy work, please visit us at bcf.org. Sign up for our e-news, which will soon include a platform where you can join us in our public policy work. If you haven't made your gift to our Civic Leadership Fund that fuels all this public policy work, please do so now. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Please hit that like and share button even now, because that will get this video out to your family and friends, because we want the world to know what the Baltimore Community Foundation is up to. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.